We will call the meeting to order for the New Ulm Economic Development Authority for July 13th, 2021. We will waive the roll call. We have a full body here today. So our first item on the agenda is just approval of the minutes from our June 2nd, 2021 meeting and the June 8th, 2021 minutes.
I'll second.
We have first and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. What we're going to do now is we're going to skip to item 5 under other business and accept the presentation from Brown County Child Care Statistics. We have Laura Filzen with us today, and she's going to do a presentation. Let me start by saying thank you for coming in this morning. We have.
And Mr. Chair, just to update everybody, what we did last month was to we started asking more questions about our daycare options and if this is part of the EDA not requirements, but things that we should be thinking about for workforce development, the need for more daycare. So we did some work on this probably 5 years ago and made a little progress, and then we really haven't done a lot lately. So what we talked about last month was to see if Ms. Filzen would come in and talk a little bit about what's going on in the child care world. So we'll let her introduce herself and what she does for her job and run through some statistics. So welcome.
Yeah. So my name's Laura Filzen. I work at Brown County. I'm the lead licensing social worker. That means that I license the daycare, foster care, and your CRS is the community residential settings. And so our primary concern here is the child care is what you're interested in. But I'm going to put a little spike in here. We need foster homes, foster care homes. Just saying that.
There you go, Andrew.
So anyway, do you guys have the handout at all?
Yes, we're looking at it. Yep.
All right, and so with that, if you can see, in 2016, the closes, that 5 places or 5 homes closed, but we had 11 new. And I do believe that's about the time you guys did the last push to get more childcare. And I do know a lot of people do ask, what's happening with the childcare? Is it going down or whatever? I do know we do have a slot problem, which is infant care. That's a huge area that's hard to cover. And one of the reasons for that problem is because in child cares you can only have 3 under the age of 2, and only 2 of them can be infants at the most, not all 3. And so that's where that comes in. So if we have in Brown County roughly 80, and that's the whole county, 80 homes, that's all the babies we can have that are getting care. But we do, however, have, our licensed daycare facilities, and those are not licensed through the county. So if it is a child care center, the county does not license that, the state licenses those. We only do family child care. And in family child care, they care for 14 and under, and the majority care for 12 and under, or 12 children. So, but anyway, so in 2021, as you see, we had 2 new closes, and I guess our numbers are down to 76. So, and I do know when I started, I started in 89, or 89, in 18, and there was 89 cases. So that's how many have gone down since that time. Many of the people we've got a retirement age going on, and I foresee many more closing because of retirement as well. Some seek new jobs. I do know one of the struggles that the child care have is that it's not an insurance job. And to get insurance on your own is very expensive. So many of them will move on to get that kind of a job. And then of course, paperwork and training. There is a lot of training. There's new laws added every year. That's by your legislator. Those are things that can't be changed. There's nothing we can do about that, unless, of course, you go up to lobby. And then And another reason is difficult parents. A lot of our, actually, when we sent out the survey recently, I was surprised. A lot of our childcare are talking about how hard it is for the parents, but there's two ends to that story. As you know, as a working person, you don't want to be told, got to close today. Because then you can't go to work, and then you have to use your days. But at the same time, the the child care parent has to go ahead and make their appointments and do their obligations as well to their family. So it's kind of a struggle. And then, and what's new, actually, we tried to make the process easier. In the last 2 years, we put the orientation piece online instead of having to come in person, which we don't really get as many hits as we would like onto that website, and we actually track every time it gets hit. So we know how many are looking at it, even if they don't fill out anything. We just know how many are looking at that website. One of the really nice things that we had implemented is SMART. This is a program that actually came down, and we're a pilot program for this program, and they are coming in and educating our child care homes. I think they're doing 6 right now, and what they do is teach how each play action or every action that you are doing with a child, how that improves their brain functioning. So that's been real exciting to follow that along. So that's it on that sheet. I'm going to give you a quick survey we did. So I sent out a survey last week after I knew you wanted to do this presentation, because I know you're really looking forward to seeing if there's anything the EDA can do to help. And I just want to see, we had 17 responses, and which isn't too bad for getting it on a Wednesday and asking for it Friday. So,
We can pass them down if you want to just,
oh, okay.
do you need one?
Oh, I suppose I should take one, huh?
Put one on the overhead too.
I don't, you're telling me to do that?
Just lay it underneath that. Just lay it straight down like that, yep.
Yeah, I can't still read that, but. So, if you look here, and we made up some charts here so you can kind of see where they're looking at. We have 0 to 5 years. When do you plan on closing? And out of the 17 that responded, you can see
Yeah.
our numbers are pretty high there. And so, and some of them, even we said retire or close, and so not all of them were of retirement age. Some were looking at closing because they have kids going back to school or something in that area. And then, are you filled capacity? As you can see, the answer is no. Some are saying yes, and some of them that said yes were actually filled to the capacity that they would like to be at.
What is the capacity per
So the
house?
capacity is either 12 or 14. It depends on their or actually 10 to 14, depending on what their license is. And so they can license for the different levels. So they can have 10, but in all the age categories, the most they can have is up to 3 under 2.
Thank you.
And then on the next page, so I want to know specifically about the infant spots, because I do know that that's an area that everybody calls and they want to place their infants. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but people actually base having a child on their daycare slot. And that's a true fact. I hear daycare parents always saying, well, this one's going to be trying to have a child to fill that slot. So, but if you look, do you have an open slot? Pretty slim there. We had 2 out of the 17 that had 1 open slot. And I do believe one of those 2 said that they're actually expecting one to come in. And then will you have an opening? 4 of them answered yes, but when you're looking at 17, and then if you think about all the rest of the 78, and then do you find it hard to fill slots? We did have some yes, and I did hear some of them talk about the preschool slot, because there is a lot of preschool education out there. Those slots aren't getting filled, and that's usually the area that that you make more of your income off of because the school age are in school. And the preschool need full-time daycare, if you understand. And then challenges for operating it. So I asked them to, write what they believe their challenges are. I didn't give them a checkbox or anything like that. And there was a overall consensus on what was going on. And if you see, it says, balancing their kids and actually working with school-age kids. So that was new to me. So we also do a newsletter for our childcare. And so we plan to add a section that incorporates school age based on this. And then time management and setting a schedule, and not having any time away and having no substitute care available. So that one's a really important one, and that's the one that it would be really nice if we could get like a professional substitute in the area that could help those caregivers, but I don't know how to even begin to initiate someone to do something like that. Because if they had a professional sub, then that person could be used through several of them, and then they can make their appointments and go to their kids' concerts and all the things that they feel that they're missing, and make it a little bit easier. And actually last year, they enacted more rules for subs into legislature. And so now the subs actually have to do pretty much the exact same training as the provider themselves. So that is another reason that became a huge topic, because they can't just ask someone to help fill out anymore and just get a background study and minimal training. They now need the same training, pretty much. So, and parents understanding and communicating with the provider. They do struggle with some of the parent interactions. And another part of it is COVID was a little bit tough because they were isolated, and they did have to stay within their boundaries the whole time too, and we're doing the survey right after that. And then of course keeping up with all the paperwork and training. I always think about that if you think about the paperwork and training. So they work their 9 hours a day or 10 hours a day providing their child care, and then they get to end that, and then they get to do all their training, which is of course free. Like, they pay for it, but they don't get reimbursed money-wise for that, if you put it in there, because I think an average is $275 they charge an hour for child care. So, and if you do that multiplying by 12, that's only like $32 an hour, and that's got to take care of your vacation, your health insurance, and everything else. And I actually asked them why they think others, because I figured they'll be hearing out in the world what's going on, don't open up their own business, and they think it is the ever-changing rules and worried about being filled to capacity. And then the back sheets, I'm not going to actually read any of it. You guys, that's for you. Those were the actual responses that we got, so you can read their words. That's about it. Questions?
Yeah, Lori, what would you recommend for the EDA to help us help you?
Well, we can always use more recruitment, to bring them in. And we don't, actually at Human Services, don't really see recruitment as being part of what our job description is. We do believe that's for the EDA. So we really wait for the people to apply to us so we can get the ball rolling. But then we will help them. We help them sort through all the rules. We'll take them, by the hand and make sure that they know this is the paperwork that's done, this is the next step, this is what's going to go on. And I know that our licensors do a pretty good job at that.
Are there people who do now sub for?
I do not know. I do know that there is a sub out there. I don't know if she's only shared between a few or whatever, but I don't know who she is, and I think it's only like between family, like families that do care. It'd be nice if there was like a sub.
Kind of like your teacher subs, you know,
Yeah.
that sub and just have a
Yeah,
a
you know, and the
daycare
person would
sub.
have to keep up on their training and stuff like that, but I don't know, you know, how that would look, or, that was just one of my brain thoughts when I was going over their
Good
problems.
idea.
Does Washington School still have their spring training for daycare? Do they
You
still
know,
doing
I
that?
do, I didn't hear about it this year, but I know that
of
she's
COVID,
very
maybe.
active in
'Cause
getting
that also came
trainings.
as a result of our grant. You know, 6 years ago, we wrote the grant through Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. We got 30,000, I think. I can't remember the number. And we actually hired somebody half-time, I don't remember the hours, but their job primarily was to figure out the problem that we just looked at and figure out potential solutions. And one of the biggest barriers, which I still read, is the training. So we set up that spring training every year. And then I think she did a bunch of recruitment. And then a group of us that were on the committee went over to Owatonna and big presentation, all-day training. And they basically said for EDAs or groups that wanted, communities that wanted to improve daycare, basically did one of several things. One was they would ask a current daycare facility if they would want to expand. And then the EDA would help with funding, help with resources, that kind of thing. The second one is to take a home daycare and move them into a church basement where they could expand and take more people. And then, EDA would help with costs and expenses there. What we did find out that would not work is going into like 3M or larger places and asking them to open up daycare. The results didn't show that they really helped the community overall. Surprisingly, whatever, that's just what they came up
That
with.
was actually, someone suggested that
Yeah.
somewhere down the line.
But what I saw a little bit in some of these notes here is insurance. What would if, and I'm just brainstorming here, what if EDA created a fund to help with something like that?
Yeah.
Would that make it more appealing to more people who might want it?
It may, because as you can see,
If that's a
one of
barrier
their-
that says, I
that's one
won't
of their
go.
barriers.
I mean, I just brainstorming thing.
And then I was thinking, they were talking about parent interaction or with the parents, but I really do believe it is, because, COVID came along,
Right.
and you have to close almost anytime there was a positive or a family positive, they were closing. And then the child care provider would have to close on their own, and then that parent would miss they had 10 days if they didn't have a good support system to help take care of the kids.
Well, I know when we set that up 5-6 years ago, that committee, it was very interesting because very quickly Sleepy Eye and Springfield jumped on board because they had the same problems. They're like, can we be part of your group too? So we made it a countywide thing. And the person that we hired actually helped so it became a countywide thing, and they actually helped open up a facility in Springfield or Sleepy Eye. Sleepy Eye, I think it was, yeah, which really helped that area. But then that person found another job and we didn't finish it. But we've talked about daycare as a group here for many years, and I really think we need to move to that next step. And I don't know if it's going back to Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation and see if they got a grant coming up that could help us with this, or is there somebody, Chris, somebody's got to contact these people to see if they're willing to do anything, and I suppose we have to decide if that's something that we're willing to do. Thoughts?
I had a question for you, Laura, because you had said earlier that you saw a positive spike in the number of new licenses that correlated back to when we had that committee formed and did some outreach. So I would think we would have a history there then of some positive responses to being more interactive or engaged at that point. So I think it's imperative that maybe we look at that. I would think that maybe what we would like to do or should look at doing is formulate a task force. And what I think we need to do is get a group of stakeholders together. We want to get representation, obviously, from the in-home daycares, if we could find some providers that have spare time, I don't know.
During the day, you can't do it unless it's a nighttime.
Well, right,
Yeah.
so we'd have to be really, and maybe we do it online, and maybe we would do it after hours or something like that, but I think their input, your input, and folks, your licensing team, and folks from the county obviously play a role. Then I would think a representation from the centers in town, because they're a little different animal because they're regulated by the state, but I believe we've seen some opening of centers in our local local community too. So that's had an impact on maybe on some of these numbers as well. But I agree with Les. That was the one thing that just glared at me was, okay, you're running your own business, and I think a number one reason that a person chooses to go into daycare quite often is because they have small children themselves. Isn't that probably a common theme?
It's very true.
And so they're staying home with their own children, and then they're providing care for others' children as well. But then you're foregoing a lot of those benefits. You're a small independent business owner. And I didn't know if there'd be a way, if we formulated a group where we could come together and maybe we could be the facilitator of providing a group health plan, for instance, for the county daycare providers and home daycare providers. If that's something we could explore.
And I have seen over the years, like the state tried to implement something at
Well,
one time.
I've heard unionization kind of thrown out there at different times, and
I don't know what the results to all that was. I didn't follow it.
yeah. But I mean,
Do you have
maybe,
a group of people you could throw that question out to see what their response would be, if they've heard anything
I
like
can mail it out to them.
that? I mean, more statewide.
More state, yeah, actually I do. Actually,
Okay.
yeah, and
They
I
have-
have, actually after this meeting, I have a region meeting, so that'll
okay.
Yeah.
connect with 7 other.
I think if nothing else today, hopefully you can walk away and say, we're here. And I know exactly what you're saying. Your job is, you're a neutral party. You have to mandate the rules set out by the state in terms of licensing. And so you can't be an advocate for getting people into daycare because at the same time, you have to regulate and make sure they're complying with all the appropriate laws. So really, it should be our role, like you had said earlier, like an EDA, because I do believe it relates to our workforce development, and it ties together with having a good pool of employees, and if they've got good, adequate daycare, it's just all going to come together. So I think we should look at some role in the capacity to try to facilitate. And I don't know, I think maybe we start the discussions now to formulate some sort of a group or task force that says, okay, this is what we want to do going forth. I would be really curious, and I don't know if you've got these numbers off the top of your head, but how many kids are there in Brown County in need of daycare versus how many spots available? What kind of a deficit would we be looking at? And I'd be really curious
They
to know.
actually had that, and I don't have that with me, but there is actually, I think the state even formulates something like that shows.
Okay, it gives us some numbers to work with at least to see if we can incrementally improve that as we go forward with whatever things we decide we're going to do.
Remember that being a hard number to figure out because when you need daycare, you call every single person.
Yes.
And get on everybody's list, but it's the same person or same
Well, and-
kids. So, but you can estimate that, and I think our previous person that we hired did do some of that for us and gave us some guesstimes.
I was just curious, how many providers would you like to attract with this, or?
Well, that's
how
kind of
many-
what I'm at is what is our measurable goal?
The daycare, the newborn is where we really need to concentrate a lot of our efforts, in my opinion, because that's the hardest part, is you can't get those folks back into the workforce because there's no daycare for the newborns. They're being so hard, difficult.
It is,
I mean, not all of our time, but.
I know someone said to me they call a daycare before they even call their OB doctor, make an appointment because they know they're pregnant or whatever, because that's higher on the priority list than going to the
It
doctor.
really does. I am absolutely shocked that the child care provider knows that they're pregnant, sometimes even before the husband.
Well, we can't spend all morning on this topic for sure, but thank you, Laura, for coming this morning.
Yeah, it was very
Appreciate
informative, thank you.
I'm wondering if,
I'm-
I'd like to hear from Chris just on some comments from the city manager's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we can do whatever the EDA wants. Realistically, if we do form a task force, I would give that task force 90 days. This task force doesn't need to meet for a year to figure this out. We already know what the issues are, so it's what input do they have on programming. As far as programming goes, we as the EDA have a bunch of programs out there. We have our new business grant, which is $10,000. I know a daycare has taken advantage of that already. We have EDA funding for remodeling. We actually have spoken to some of the centers to see if they'd like to expand, and one of them would, but they just can't find workers to expand, to hire to get their facility up and running. So what's the point of expanding at that point? And based on the information, even if we do, start doing the in-home daycares and start helping them get through that, let's say we have 60 slots that we need available. We need 30 providers, which again, we can do over time, but, so again, I don't know what the answer is, and it's stuff we can look into. Heather and I talked to, another EDA or HRA director, and in their area, they had the daycare providers, the in-home ones, all get together and form a co-op, and that's how they got insurance. So there are things that are available to that we can look at and look into, but it's getting all the providers on the same page, wanting to do things together, because if we go down the path of doing a co-op so they can all get insurance, at an affordable rate, they all have to be part of it, because if someone's not, then that just increases the costs, and, they might not get the break that they need.
Kick out their grants. And could we go after another one? They were very excited about when we did ours 6 years ago. They were glad to help us.
They're periodically throughout the year. I know they have a couple grant cycles. I'll look to see.
Contact them and to see if they're,
Yeah.
because I think that's the real key, is we can talk about this all we want, but we have to have somebody who's willing to roll up their sleeves and dig into this and bring back some solutions or options for us to consider. So, and we'll keep Laura in the loop, and if you can keep us in the loop or keep me in the loop, I'll forward to them.
that question out too, to see how interested.
Yeah, see if there's anything. I kind of like that concept. Thank you very much for coming this morning.
Thank you.
So can we keep this on the agenda, Heather? Great, thank you. Do you want to form a task force now, or how far do you want to go? I don't want to
Why,
slow it
why
down.
wait? That's a question I have for the
We had a
panel.
really nice group last time. We had people from the hospital and Makepeace. She was HR director back then. Oh man, we had, well, it was all over the county. With city representation on there.
With preschool age being an issue, I think someone from the schools, I just know personally, having kids in preschool and in a in-home daycare,
Yep.
busing was key to making that work. But different preschools in town, some are all day, some are 2 days a week, full day, some are half days. Might need some work with the schools too, I don't know.
And maybe an industry leader or two, because they have expressed recruiting issues due to our reputation for lack of childcare.
Yeah, I think that's why Ed Makepeace was on there, because she was representing the whole hospital, and they desperately needed daycare back then, which I'm sure they still do, but. Why don't we all think of other potential folks or ask around this month and see if we can bring some names. We don't want too big a group, but we had about a dozen last time. But again, that was countywide. I don't know if we want to stay city concentrated more this time.
I would
Talk
say
about that next time.
I would say yes, because you're the EDA for the city, not the county. So keep it.
Kind of got complicated when we went countywide, because at that time they had 2 daycares in all of Springfield. I mean, they desperately needed more help than we did, so we concentrated on them.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and I would keep it. I would keep it to 7, not including city staff. So 7 outside. 7 outside members just makes it a little bit
can't
easier to
get maybe
manage.
Somebody in current daycare, maybe we can get somebody who just retired, so they have that experience. So if anybody knows anybody who just got out of the business.
I also know that Mankato really has also really been struggling with the same issue, and a couple of years ago, I know that they have really been working on it. I don't know if it would be helpful to maybe have somebody from another community that's kind of already gone through, addressing some of these problems and what maybe was working for them. But I know it wouldn't be somebody in town, but it would be somebody that maybe can give us some better perspective on what was working and what didn't work for them, so that we don't make that same mistake.
I would think with that, we could probably just invite them to probably the first meeting to have them present on kind of what worked for them and what didn't, so we kind of have a baseline of what they did, and then we can work from there.
You want to make a couple calls and see if you find somebody you think would,
Yeah, I know
Between
one
now
or
and
two
then,
over
let
there
Heather
that
know.
I've talked to about that, so.
great.
could we at this point simply use our good friends at the press to get the word out? And then if someone in these respective areas would be interested, that they could just contact the city? And we can start formulating interest there to see what kind of responses we might get, or send an email to the city. At least that's a gathering point. And then I think what we should do is, once we kind of get a group together, I believe soliciting grant funds from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Fund would be another next step after that. But I think we'd kind of want a sense of direction and what we want to do with the funds. But I think gaining information is going to be critical. And within that subcontext, I mean, you mentioned, Chris, that, you know, we have a center that would like to expand, but they can't find workforce. So in essence, it becomes a workforce issue about a workforce issue.
Yeah.
So we may, that might be a particular area that we want to focus on too. And I think we've had positive results before. So simple portion of that should just be outreach. And I think what we could do is, if we know that we will be there consistently with resources, and I think haven't we funded in the past some of the continuing education courses and stuff? And if we commit to that on a regular basis and know that they have local resources available for that component of it, at least that to me, that's a really straightforward piece that we could commit to even today and make that ongoing, so that and again, that would have to be coordinated probably with the county. We want to make sure we hit all the right marks when it comes to continuing ed. But I think it's providing those resources in such a manner that it's most beneficial for those providers, because they've got enough challenges. So if we can take and provide that for them, I think we could start that today, you know.
Well, and I didn't know until today that they did not do any recruitment. That surprised me.
Well, I don't
So
think-
could that be part of our role, is
Exactly.
throw some money in for recruitment? Just Clay tomorrow mentioning that we have there's this city or county website to go to if you have an interest, and that's where it explains everything. That can be just huge, driving people to that website. So that's some more we can talk about. Maybe you're right. I think that could be some early initiative.
We can start with our feet running with a couple of those primary, it could be, we've had past success with that. But then from there, I think there's two things we want to focus on is, what are we not hitting? What greater steps maybe we need to take, and how do we make this ongoing? I agree, a task force is a temporary sort of solution, but out of that task force, then hopefully there's some permanent solutions that come, and then we can define what role the EDA is going to play and what kind of funding we're going to need to put forward with that, and kind of go from there, so.
Yeah, and that's why I want to put a time limit on the task force.
Yeah.
So you just have them say their piece. And to me, I mean, task force might not even be what we need. Just invite them here and talk to the EDA, so you know it's a one meeting thing, and then Heather and I can sit down and write down, hey, these are the initiatives
I'll
we
bet you
need.
Most of them have no clue.
Yeah, you know, and I think that way you get the feedback you need, everyone hears it, and then you can just hit the ground running with a lot more things, instead of trying to set up a meeting, getting everyone involved, having one or two meetings, then presenting that, and then you're still kind of 3 months from now, you're still in the same place.
Yeah,
You know,
very true.
And you see one comment on here where their house is too small. And I'm like, ooh, can we grab that person and move them into a church, or?
Well,
I
and
don't
that's,
know,
I was going to ask Laura that. Can we move a in-home provider to a church and still have them classified as an in-home daycare, because they're not technically in their house? Excuse me. Do they become a center at that point? But you have experience in them, and maybe that's
not
just a
sure.
question
I'm
we
not
pose, yeah. But there's,
That's what works.
yeah, there's solutions out there, and I think we just have to make that step to and we've had these discussions from time to time. So it's like let's put this to bed. Let's formulate a plan and make a commitment. And I think a lot of it for the EDA ultimately is just going to be financial resources that we put forward, and they know. But I think the other big thing is if we can formulate that co-op and make that something viable and that people get on board with that and say, hey, I've got this opportunity now with this profession I'm in to have that, that is at least going to make this competitive with them looking and seeking out other forms of employment because they do get those kind of benefits.
Yep.
So,
All right, we better move back to our
yes,
agenda.
we'll go.
So, just for clarification, do you want me to put a task force together? Is that the direction? And give it 60 days? I mean, I'll get the ball
Well,
rolling
Okay,
and,
so why don't we do this? Should we, again, let's just make the call out to the community to say, we would like to hear from those folks that are interested in possibly forming a group or holding a special meeting. And then based on the feedback we get, I liked your idea of maybe we just have a special EDA meeting that we call specifically for the topic of a daycare discussion. And if we get the various stakeholders in the room and we have that discussion, we can formulate that. We could be a one-meeting task force and then from there formulate a plan. If from that meeting, we determine we need to have some ongoing sort of thing, at that point, maybe we could form a task force. But maybe we start with just a meeting based on responses we get. So does that sound acceptable?
yeah, let's go that route.
Okay,
That's a good first step.
all right. I think we're back to item 3, right?
Point one.
EDA Administrator's Activity Report for June 2021.
Right. Good morning, Commissioners and President Brom. I'll just highlight a few items for you for the report for the month of June. Under the Public Housing Program, note that we did receive the new chairs to Broadway House that we had ordered, and we have received nothing but positive feedback from the tenants. They look really nice. The tenants are really happy with them, so that was a good change for the building. Note under the EDA report that staff did finish the new fact sheets and applications for the city and EDA incentive programs, and those are available now on the city website. Still working with IT on the electronic application, and we're close to having the first one ready to go, and then we'll have a template for the other ones, so it should go pretty quick after that first one's ready to go. Also note the Design Review Committee met last month and approved 2 house designs for the Milford Heights First Edition, and the developer intends to get those started before winter. Note under the Home Buyer Assistance Loan Program, 2 applications were received and are pending, one in the amount of $6,900 and the other in the amount of $10,000. Note under the Get It Ready Loan Program, 1 application was received and is pending in the amount of $9,000. Note under the Multifamily Rental Rehab Loan Program, 1 application was received and approved, just under $47,000. I believe those are all the items. So a lot of activity in our loan programs in June.
Good to see the money going out.
Yeah,
It means,
I'll offer a motion to accept the EDA report for June 21.
I'll second.
we have a first and second. Is there any other additional comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? A motion is carried. All right, under item 4.1, Broadway House Plumbing Improving Project.
Okay, so we talked about this project at the May EDA meeting, and it was approved for staff to go out and solicit bids. We sent bid packets to 11 vendors, and we only received 1 bid, so you can see contractors are extremely busy, and it's very difficult to get their time these days, especially with summer construction going on. The bid we received was from GOG Sheet Metal in the amount of $18,500. Just to give you an overview, the project includes installing water shutoff valves in 40 apartments, as well as the public restrooms, laundry room, and community room kitchen at Broadway House Apartments. And And this is so that when we have to make a repair, we don't have to shut down water to the entire building, which is what we have to do now. So I think it's a good project, a good use of our capital fund money. Our estimated cost for the project was $20,000, so we were pretty close, came in a little lower. We'll pay for the project with our 2020 capital fund grant. We currently have about $65,000 still available for projects in that fund.
Well, we all know how much damage one flood from one apartment could be to an entire building, so I'm going to offer or award the Broadway House Plumbing Improvement Project, amount of $18,500 at GOG Sheet Metal.
Second.
First and second. And yeah, I think this is something that it doesn't pay to wait. It came under the estimate, so. Any other discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Next item, 4.2, is Broadway House Automatic Door Opener Project.
All right, this is another capital fund project I'd like to propose for the Broadway House Apartments. Currently, the building has automatic door openers on the main entrance to the building that faces 3rd North. But we would like to propose adding those door openers to the other 3 entrances of the building. We have a lot of tenants with mobility issues. They're either using a walker, wheelchair, motorized scooter, that sort of thing. And this would allow them to be able to use any entrance to the building they wanted to. If they park on the other end of the building and they're having to go all the way around to the 3rd North entrance to use that door because it has the automatic buttons, this would just make their life easier and give them more options to go in and out the door of their choosing. We also have 2 patios at the building. One faces Broadway and the other faces the alley. And the doors going out to those patios don't have the automatic buttons. So again, they're having to go out 3rd North and go around to utilize those outdoor areas. And, you know, we want the building to be accessible to people of all abilities. So we think this is a worthy project to consider. We did get an initial quote to get an idea of what it might cost, and we're estimating this to cost around $20,000, and we do have capital fund grant money available to use. So I would like to propose moving forward and getting bids on this project if you approve it.
And these are the push button openers? It's like the button you push.
This would be the automatic openers, yeah.
Yep, okay.
Is there a security element to that? When you go into 3rd North, or you don't just walk in the building?
Right, all the doors are secured. It's a secured building, and the tenants have a key fob that opens the door. This would be hooked into that system. So the way it works on the 3rd North entrance now is when they use their key fob, it automatically opens the doors for them. It's hooked up to that automatic entry. So all of the entrances would be hooked up that way. So the doors would just automatically open when they swipe that key fob. Which is nice too when you're carrying groceries and other things too, so.
I think it's great to have it for all people. Even if you're not, it's sometimes really nice. Like you say, you've got groceries, you've got somebody else with you, you're holding their hands. I think it's great. So I'll make a motion to approve the Broadway House Automatic Door Opener Project and authorize staff to solicit bids.
I'll second the motion.
First and second. Is there any additional discussion on the matter?
I have one other question with that.
Yes.
In case of a power outage, they can still get in the building using a regular key or something?
We have an emergency generator, so
Okay,
even in a power outage, these doors would work.
okay.
Great, okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 4.3 is EDA claims list.
Anything there we shouldn't be aware of?
Any
of the
sore
ordinary?
thumb sticking out? Doesn't look like
I
it.
guess the only thing I'll mention is we did have a kind of a high bill for exterior window cleaning. We don't typically clean the windows of the apartments. That's kind of the tenant's responsibility, but we did that tuck pointing project was that last summer? And there was a lot of concrete dust that really got in the screens, and we were getting a lot of complaints from the tenants. We can't hardly see out our window, and so we did hire someone to come in, and it was expensive because our screens can't be removed from the outside, so they can't just go up on a lift and clean the windows. They had to enter through each apartment to take the window apart, clean it, and put it back on. So it's really labor intensive. That's not something I intend to have to do again anytime soon. It's hopefully a one-time thing, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the EDA claims list.
I'll second.
First and second, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moves us down to item 6.1, to accept the Economic Development Activity Report for June 2021.
Commission President, Commissioners, I'll just touch on the kind of the two major things that I'm working on right now would be working with Hanska Co-op to see if there's assistance needed for the reconstruction of the elevator down there. Working with the utilities, the state, to see if there's a program that we can apply for funding out to help them reconstruct. And then potentially the city would be looking at doing a loan with the co-op, so we probably have to come to the EDA to help fund the remainder, as the revolving loan doesn't have enough funds to cover the $250,000. So at some point, the city would be coming to ask the EDA to help fund that. And then looking at finishing up the downtown tax abatement program, just finishing up the calculations to make sure it pencils out and that the numbers that we have makes sense for someone to even apply for it, both on our side and the applicant side. And then still working on closing burning loan, that doesn't eat up tons of my time, but it's just checking in once a week to see where they are with their funding before we close. So that's kind of the major things that I'm working on right now. And then still trying to move forward with the mall project.
I'll make a motion to accept the Economic Development Activity Report for June 2021.
Second.
We have a first and second. Is there any additional comments? Hearing none, I'll call for all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. So, we're done. We are adjourned.
Even though I am an old man.
Oh, you're not.